So I want to talk about one of the biggest questions probably in the housing market right now, and it's this, word that we hear everywhere: recession. On the news, talking heads, certainly folks talking about the economy slowing down in recession. And what I'm going to make a case for is there's one thing that every homeowner needs to know about a recession, and I'm going to tell you up front what it is. It's that recession doesn't equal housing crisis, and I'm going to prove that to you here in just a minute with a couple of visuals and a couple of graphics. But if I were to set this time up together that we're going to spend, it's this way. The first half of this year has certainly been defined in real estate by rising interest rates. We wrapped up the end of last year with the average 30-year fixed about 3.1% according to Freddie Mac, and now we're right at 5%, up over 5% right now, and a 2-point jump, causing a lot of folks that have been looking in the market to sort of take pause. We've seen the headlines that say existing home sales are down. We've seen the headlines that say the economy is slowing down. Interest rates are rising. It costs more to buy a home. So I want to address that. I want to give you, again, a couple of quotes, a couple of visuals that really sort of give us an explanation of where we're at in the market and cover this topic of recession, because I believe where we're at today, combined with the worries and fears of recession, create uncertainty in consumers' minds, certainly those thinking about buying. So whenever there's uncertainty, people don't make a decision, they pause. But here's what our opportunity is. It's in times like this of uncertainty, being certain about what's happening. And that's what I'm going to give you. So let's start off here with this first quote from Danielle Hale from Realtor.com. The housing market is at a turning point. So that's the phrase I would use as I was talking to people. We're at a turning point. We've come out of the last couple of years in the pandemic, seen tremendous volume, tremendous, a number of people come into the housing market and want to buy a home. And we're sort of at a turning point. And she goes on to say this: we are starting to see signs of a new direction, but the ball is still in sellers' courts in most markets. So at a turning point in the market, but clearly in most markets, just about every market across this country, there are more buyers than there are available homes to be purchased. So still in a seller's market, but starting to see that turn. Why is this important? Because we're coming out of a time from the pandemic where we saw the meaning of home change for many, many people. We saw interest rates drop to historic lows and a lot of activity come into the market. And, we're sort of shifting from that, turning from that activity. Second point, existing home sales. This is a look right now at existing home sales going all the way back to 2017. The reason why I went back that far is probably the normal years in the market we want to look at are 2017, 2018, and 2019, pre-pandemic sales. And if you see that there, 5.5 million homes sold, 5.3 in 2018 and 2019. Where are we heading right now? We're heading back to pre-pandemic levels. So the market's not, blowing up and there's not this catastrophic impact, but we certainly are coming out of the enormous demand, the enormous sales that we've seen during the pandemic. So that'd be the second point that I would reinforce with my clients. Give them perspective on where we've been over the last couple of years, where we were prior to that. And oh, by the way, 2018, 2019, very, very good years in residential real estate heading into the pandemic when we saw, sort of this historic demand come through. And where are we at today? Well, as of April, seasonally adjusted sales for existing homes at 5.6 million units. So heading back to that demand. Okay, let's go back to where, let me pause for a second. People are hearing, existing home sales are down, foreclosures are up, whatever's in the media about housing. You can't, open up a news app or turn on the news and not hear something about housing these days, and they get worried. We're seeing a shift. Sales and volume is heading back to pre-pandemic levels. Let me go to the third point from Realtor.com. Experts don't believe the market is in a bubble or a crash is in the cards like during the Great Recession. The nation is still suffering from a housing shortage that has reached crisis proportions at a time when many millennials are reaching the age they start to consider home ownership. That's likely to keep prices high. So what are they saying there? We talked about before, the ball is in sellers' courts, and what's driving demand is millennials. Behind the baby boomers, the second largest generation we've seen coming through their peak home buying years. Okay, so a lot of demand still in the market, heading back to pre-pandemic levels. Let's get to the point that we started off with. Recession doesn't equal housing crisis. And this is the graphic I would be using right now with all of my clients. Okay, What we did at Keeping Current Matters is we went back all the way to the 80s and looked at recessions that have happened to this country and said, what happens to home prices? And when you go back and you look at that, there have been 6 recessions in this country going back to the early 80s. In 4 of the 6, home prices actually appreciated. You know, most people think that every time a recession hits and we go through that home prices lose value. Well, we know 2 times they did. In the early 90s, less than 2%, I'd say marginal depreciation. And the one time that everybody remembers is back in 2008 when homes lost almost 20% value. Now, why is this important? You hear the headlines, you hear about existing home sales, you hear about everything happening in the real estate market, and then you hear recession. It causes people to take a pause and say, I'm not sure I want to move forward. We can be out there with this message that recession doesn't equal housing crisis. We have the data and the information to prove it, because most people, again, think we go into recession, we're going to lose value in our home. And that's certainly not the case. You know, if you look at what experts are predicting this year for home price appreciation, it's about 9%. And to put that in perspective, that's not as much as we saw last year, but it's certainly well ahead of historical appreciation in the market. So here's what our job is today. It's to bring the message and bring the truth to the clients we serve. And one of the ways you can do that is going to the KCM blog and signing up for the blog. If you go to kcmblog.com, put your email address in, you will get the information you need in your email box every morning. You'll stay on top of what's happening in the real estate market so that you can be the most educated agent on topics like these.